Hi, Rabia.
Hey, Ellyn. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I was thinking I should just start calling you Marsh. I feel like
Marsh?
Yeah, hey, Marsh. Like we're old school detectives, all
Yeah.
grizzled. Hey,
Marsh and Chaudry on the case. And we have like cigars or
Yeah.
like a pipe. That would be super fun. Well, welcome everyone to Rabia and Ellyn Solve the Case. And welcome if you're new, and hi again if you aren't. And we are here on our true crime talk show. And today we are welcoming not only a decorated journalist, podcaster, badass, but our dear friend who we love and adore.
Mhm.
It is the Maggie Freleng. Hi, Maggie.
Hey
Living
guys,
legend.
nice to see you.
Welcome, Maggie. I'm so excited to have you. You are a true crime legend. You really are.
Thank you. And I listen to you guys
Yeah.
all the time, even though I didn't know what a DB was. I swear I listen. So
We know you do
DB
because we get text messages.
I know,
From you
I
saying,
text
wait, what
you."
about this?
It's kind of my favorite thing. Whenever there's something that Maggie gets really passionate about, we'll have a text chain and she's like, did you think about that? Did you think about that? We're like, yeah, Maggie, we only get like an hour and some minutes to tell this story. But I have been texting with you guys all week long because I want this case to be a 16-part series. But before we jump in, for those of you who live under a true crime rock, please let me just give a brief synopsis of Maggie Freleng. She has a teeny tiny, shiny new Pulitzer Prize for being a reporter and a producer and a badass.
Wait, can I stop you for a second? Maggie,
Yes.
what does a Pulitzer look like? What does it actually look like?
there isn't one.
Wait, excuse me, what?
I got a sheet of paper and then it's it's those two little like coins with I think. Yeah,
I
it
thought
doesn't
they gave you like a plaque with the coins or the
No.
actual coins.
No. Really
That
sad.
is
The
really
most
sad.
prestigious award,
I
I got a piece of paper. So.
Holy crap.
Whatever it is.
I'm going to print
it's your
myself up
bragging
one
right.
tonight. I'm printing one up myself.
I know, right? Like anyone's gonna deny that. But she is the host and producer of Wrongful Conviction with Maggie Freleng. She also has hit podcasts Murder in Alliance and Unjust and Unsolved, all focusing on wrongful convictions and crimes that are often left unsolved. She is also an adjunct professor. We need to talk about that because she has so many tattoos. You couldn't possibly be a professor, right, Maggie?
I'm too dumb to be a professor because of my tattoos. So
You're a really bad influence on those on those kids, man.
Really bad influence, yeah.
Yeah.
Among her several accolades, she was an NPR Next Generation Radio Fellow and 2019 Ford Foundation 50 Women Can Change the World in Journalism. And in
Amazing.
2023, she was honored during the World Woman Hour by the World Woman Foundation for breaking the role as female changemaker. There are so many things we can say about you, but you are smart. You speak your mind, which of course we love. You are such a pillar and an icon and a gem in this community. And we're just happy to call you friend and happy that you can be here with us.
I feel the same about both of you. So this is very exciting. And I feel really passionately about this case. And I'm glad that we're doing it because it is cuckoo bananas.
Well, it is cuckoo bananas.
Maggie, where are you right now? Right now you are like out in the desert somewhere, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to tell listeners, this is so tragic, but I'm in the desert and there is a power outage because that happens in the desert. So now I have to be at my friend's bar in an office. And I'm so sorry if you can hear the bar.
That's fine. I think it's a lot of fun to be coming in from a bar. There's nothing tragic about that. You're going to have a good time.
Okay.
The after party awaits you, I think.
Yeah.
It
Have a
awaits
glass of
me,
wine
yeah.
if you're thirsty, Maggie. We're chill around these parts.
Yeah.
But we have so much to discuss about the case that you have chosen. But first, before we dive in, we absolutely have to play our game called 3 Quick Things. And Rabia is chomping at the bit to give you her question today.
Yeah.
So what's your question?
Oh my
Because
gosh. Okay.
I have a two-parter because I don't have to follow the rules, Ellyn.
No,
Just like you don't have
you
to
make the rules, baby.
Here's what I want to know. If there is one case you desperately wish you could work on, what would that be? And who would you like to work on it with? Like name like a dream investigator. You put down your hand, Ellyn. Name if you could team up with one person you've always wanted to work with on a case you've always wanted to work with, who would that person and case be?
Honestly, Rabia, I would love to team up with you, but I feel like it would be a case that maybe you wouldn't normally
Ah.
do. The Long Island serial killer case has always been like
Oh.
I grew up on Long Island. My parents went to buy the house after, it was up for sale when they found Shannon Gilbert's body. So like
Mm.
I'm very obsessed with that case, very much so.
Yeah.
I know so many of the players in it. I would say the Lisk case, and it's certainly
Have
not
you
over.
ever like tried? Have you ever been like, "Hey, I'm right here. Like, give me the case files, people."
So yes, I'm actually
Mm.
working on something right now.
Oh, hello.
Related.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not Lisk, but it's tangential. I
Mm.
have a guy saying he's wrongfully convicted for the murder of his girlfriend, and he actually has a very good case for it being someone who was a part of the Lisk
Wow.
situation. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm kind of diving into it that way. But also like Israel Keys, man, Josh Hallmark, I would love to just be his
Mm.
researcher, you know?
Mm.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Good answer. Good answers.
Yeah.
What was the two-part? Oh, the case and who would you
And
want
who
to
would
do
you
it
want
with?
to? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna put aside my emotions that you didn't choose me, Maggie,
Sorry,
and just
Ellyn.
assume I just assume that honestly that my research is just too thorough and it's just
Yes.
too daunting. So that's
Yes.
where I'm gonna go with that.
Yes.
It's the color.
Yes.
It's the color coding,
I was
Ellen.
gonna
That
say the
really
color coding is
scares people.
too. It's
Yeah.
Listen, the ADHD brain, it works for my brain.
I want people to
Rabia
know
sends
that
me
there is so much color coding. She actually has to use the color peach to code some of the stuff. Like she's run out of colors.
she
This is how many
does.
colors are used: blue, green, dark blue, light purple, peach, orange, purple, pink. But here's the funny thing. I never realized it, even though the colors are all over the page, I never realized it was color coded. I just thought, I didn't know why. I just didn't pay attention to the colors.
I made that key at the
Wow.
top just for you,
I ignored
Rabia.
it. I
Okay.
totally ignored it.
And I ignore Rabia sends me like Encyclopedia Britannica. She sends me like paragraphs. I'm like, what do you want me to do with that? I don't know what you want me to, you want me to read that? You want me to
Yes.
make sense of that?
You know what?
But
I'm going
there
to change
is
my answer. I'm going to work with Ellyn instead because I
Oh,
like
okay.
the color coding, to be
okay.
Oh,
honest.
Yes.
okay. Fair
I
enough. You're
win
not
my
getting
color
color
code.
coding with me. Everything. I actually select all and then click black.
Yeah.
Everything.
She just goes to Wikipedia, copy, cut, paste. That's
Yeah.
all she does. Maggie,
Oh my
I'm going
God.
to go off true crime for a minute. And people who don't know you, first of all, you are the weensiest little Polly Pocket pixie. People are so, whenever they meet you in person, they're so
I
taken
know.
aback by how weensy and tiny you are. And this little weensy tiny badass full of fuck bombs and such is
Yeah.
tattooed from head to toe.
Yeah.
Tell me your most favorite tattoo and tell
Mm.
me the story behind it and why you love it.
I don't know if there's a favorite, honestly. I have a lot that I really hate.
Oh, okay.
I have a couple matching with my mom.
Mhm.
She loves getting matching tattoos. It's like her thing. So we have a bunch. So I'd say those are probably my favorite, my mom tattoos.
How many matching ones do you guys have?
2 or 3. There could be 3. And I have one for my dad as well. We have a matching one. So I've got a few family tattoos. A couple tattoos are art drawings my brother did in his sketchbook. So there's a lot of
Oh, wow.
family stuff happening.
It's so cool. And just so you know, and this is very, very powerful, my daughter thinks you're the coolest. I am an asshole. You are the coolest.
That's how parenting works.
I get to be cool aunt. I love this. I love this.
Yes, you are absolutely cool, Aunt.
Ellen, do you have
And
any
now-
tattoos?
Yeah, I have 2. I have a birth order tattoo.
Oh, that's
with
right.
My
I forgot. Yeah,
brothers.
yeah, yeah.
So they each have one filled in. And then I
Oh.
have a ladybug because my grandfather and I used to collect ladybugs.
Oh.
But I have so many more I want to get. I really, really want to get Lola's first time she wrote her name.
Oh.
Like in her, because I have it saved and I have
So
that
cute.
planned tattoo. I have a couple of them.
No.
Rabia has a massive picture of me on her back. It's creepy but beautiful.
We all knew
Yeah.
that. Rabia like undresses and is just fucking covered.
Yeah.
And the more I tone up, it just kind of, I don't know, it changes Ellen's face.
It's like instant
Cheekbones
Botox.
forever.
I love it.
All right.
Well, Maggie, this is sort of a very easy question for you because some of our guests aren't necessarily in the true crime space, but our third question we ask all of our guests is, how does true crime fit into your life?
Oh my God. How does
Tell the
it
people.
how does it not fit into my life? I mean, I guess when you work this, it's like every day of my life, but I liked true crime when it first came out. When ID first came out, I was the demographic. I think I was in like middle school. And I always say this, but I would come home from school and I would turn on Disappeared or like whatever, and I would just watch it for hours. And my mom would come home and be like, think I was just the biggest freak weirdo. Like, what is wrong with my daughter watching murder shows? It was like porn. I would like shut it and like hide. Like I would like run away from Investigation Discovery. So I've always loved true crime, and I got really lucky when I was asked to do the Maura Murray show, and it just kind of became my life.
But you had a background in journalism already, right? Before that.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your beat?
Yeah.
What was your beat?
I started off doing like international women's issues. I wound up working at NPR's Latino USA. So primarily Latinx issues. I was doing border reporting and detention center reporting. So I was going to detention centers and I spent a lot of time on the border.
You were inching closer and closer to the space anyways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was kind of like a natural progression in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's weird that you did anything with women's issues. I feel like that would be like a 5-minute topic. Women don't really have any issues.
We have no issues. We're doing great.
That's just like
it's all
open and shut.
Done.
How boring.
Exactly.
Rabia, do you struggle to save money every month?
I mean, struggle might be too strong a word, but I like to save money. How's that?
I also like to save money, and I am very, very good with my money, but I will be very honest. Something that I always got dinged for was subscriptions that I've forgotten about. You know, like you sign up for a free trial of something, and then you're like, oh, I'll cancel that when I no longer need it. And you completely forget about it.
Yeah. How are you supposed to track all that down? Well, we can tell you how with Rocket Money.
Rocket Money, because there are subscriptions for everything. You can get a subscription for streaming services. You can get a subscription for razors, for toilet paper, and Rocket Money is going to keep track of all of that. It's going to tell you what you have, ask you if you need it, because guess what? The average person thinks they're paying about $80 a month in their average subscriptions. No, my friends, you're actually paying closer to $200.
Yeah.
That's why I use Rocket Money, because I hate to waste money.
Think about that. $200. That means at least $120 worth of stuff you don't even remember that you've subscribed to. I mean, even beyond the money, the principle of it makes me crazy. I hate the fine print and you forget and you're like, oh, it just automatically renews, your subscription. But look, Rocket Money, it's a personal finance app. It finds and cancels those subscriptions. It monitors your spending. You can easily cancel the ones you don't want just through the app. You don't have to go to every single individual subscription company, whatever, and do it individually.
And it can also recommend custom budgets based on how you've spent in the past. They'll even send you notifications when you've reached your spending limits. I'm not going to tell you how I know about that. So stop wasting your money on things you don't use, cancel your unwanted subscriptions, and manage your money the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/solvethecase.
That's rocketmoney.com/solvethecase. rocketmoney.com/solvethecase. One of the things that makes me craziest, I mean, like for those of us who are trying to take better care of ourselves, take things that are not just good for you, but are helpful to you, is learning later, like years later, that, oh, your body can't actually absorb such and such. I mean, I have heard for years how so many supplements and other things we take, it just pass right through your body. But that's why I was really excited to hear that Next Evo does not and will not do that.
Yeah, our bodies just doesn't absorb CBD oil well. So you could be absorbing as little as 6% of what is on the label. I know that is infuriating because you're paying good money for stuff. Next Evo Naturals has developed a water-soluble form of CBD. It has been clinically tested multiple times, and it is proven to work faster and absorb 4 times better. So you can stay calmer or sleep better. The sleep is my favorite because we all need to sleep. We're all stressed. We all have a million things running through our mind. But why would you take something and spend it if it's not actually going to work and help you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously CBD cannot work until and unless it actually gets in your body. And only Next Evo has proven that their all-natural gummies and capsules absorb 4 times better than most oil-based products.
And here's the thing, there are so many choices of CBD right now. And at the end of the day, you have to go with brand data, and it's all there. So now you can try their brand new extra strength daily wellness CBD gummies. They are 2 times stronger than the regular strength. And like I always say, it just brings my shoulders down.
Yep. Don't waste your time with oil-based CBD that might not work. Upgrade to better natural solutions from NextEvo.
Go to nextevo.com and use promo code SOLVETHECASE to get 25% off.
That's 25% off at nextevo.com. Promo code SOLVETHECASE.
Well, we have to jump into this case, so please tell our audience what case you chose and just briefly why you chose it. And then we're going to get into our crash course, and we have so much to solve in this case. That is a solved case.
I think most people know Menendez in this room, probably. So yeah, we're going to be covering the case of Lyle and Eric Menendez.
If you asked any novice true crime connoisseur what murder trial remains etched in their brains, most people would say the O.J. Simpson murder trial. That's because outlets like Court TV played a massive role in the day-to-day coverage, the likes of which the average person had never seen in the mid-90s. But some people forget it was actually the Menendez Brothers trial that showed the inner workings of a real live courtroom drama. The trial transfixed the nation. In fact, more than 1.3 million people would tune into the saga of 2 wealthy, spoiled boys who killed their parents in cold blood. So by the time the Simpson trial came along, Court TV was a well-oiled machine with hours upon hours of testimony, expert insight, and everyday people were able to watch the legal minutiae in the courtroom. Moreover, this type of coverage turned judges, lawyers, and even witnesses into celebrities. When was the last time you thought about Kato Kaelin? Eric and Lyle Menendez became household names and a part of lunchtime conversation for people who couldn't turn away from this trial. Eric and Lyle Menendez, you know the type, you probably went to high school with them. Wealthy boys who lived in a $4 million, 23-room, Mediterranean-style mansion. They drove far too fancy cars for kids. I mean, who drives an Alfa Romeo to school? They had designer clothes, they traveled first class, and they always got their way. The handsome young men were good at sports and fairly smart. It seemed that they felt they were entitled to everything, and the narrative was the spoiled rich boys thought they could get away with anything. It was easy to roll your eyes at the Menendez brothers on trial 30 years ago, that is, and those stupid sweaters. The color of painted Easter eggs, an obvious attempt to look younger, more wholesome, and most certainly less capable of murdering their parents while in their home. Police later found out they went on lavish and ridiculous spending sprees after they lost their parents. I mean, who does that? Obviously greedy kids looking for their multi-million-dollar inheritance, right?
Unlike other cases we have covered, the Black Dahlia, Kendrick Johnson, and John Benet Ramsey, there is no mystery around the murder of Jose and Kitty Menendez. We know what happened. Eric and Lyle confessed to the savage murders. But why? Why would they brutally murder their parents, who, to the outside world, provided them with the good life? Eric and Lyle were born into privilege and wealth to Jose and Kitty Menendez. Jose had fled Cuba after the revolution and stayed with family before earning a college scholarship for swimming. He married Mary Louise Kitty Anderson in college. Shortly after their wedding, they moved to New York City, where Jose's persistence had him rapidly working up from dishwasher to working in the fast-paced world of entertainment. In the early 80s, Jose became head of RCA Records, where he helped to sign acts like Duran Duran and Menudo. The couple had 2 sons, Eric and Lyle, and the family of 4 moved to Los Angeles. What other town would the wealthy elite settle down in other than Beverly Hills? Living the life of the 1%, the Menendez brothers were pushed to succeed by the competitive nature of their father. Lyle had business smarts, and Eric was a gifted tennis player. Private coaches and tutors were hired because anything less than the best was not tolerated. Eric grew up worshiping Lyle. The brothers were described as extremely close despite their contrasting personalities. Lyle was described as having a strong, witty personality, while Eric was described as sensitive and quiet. Even though they had everything money could buy, as they got older, they started acting out. Eric took part in a number of burglaries and was forced to attend therapy, while Lyle was suspended from Princeton for a year for plagiarism. But there were far more nefarious dealings behind their gated mansion.
On October 18, 1989, Eric and Lyle Menendez purchased shotguns at a Big Five sporting goods store in San Diego, over 100 miles away from their family's mansion in Beverly Hills. But then life carried on as usual. On October 19th, their parents chartered a yacht and took them shark fishing. But the very next day, on August 20th, they burst into their home and discharged 15 shots into their parents while the couple was watching television on their couch. Eric said that he fired first, but in the end it was Lyle that landed the bullet in the back of Jose's head and shot the fatal blow to Kitty's face. They called 911.
Beverly Hills emergency.
Yes, police.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Hey, man,
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
102 response, 722 North Ellyn.
What happened? Hey, stay there,
I have a hysterical person on. We're trying to get things further. Other units responding. Is the person still there?
What happened? We have units around. What happened? Who shot who?
I don't hear anything. I just came home.
You came home and found who shot?
Mom and Dad. You know if they're still in the house, the people that did the shooting.
Get away from him. Okay, hang on. Let me talk to Eric. Who is the person that was shot?
My mom and my dad.
Your mom and dad?
My mom and my dad.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we're on our way over there with the ambulance.
Okay, I gotta go.
Okay.
Let's rewind. Exactly 7 days before the murders, Jose told Eric that he's not going to live at UCLA campus during the upcoming school year as he had planned to. Why would this be such a blow to Eric? Every kid dreams of living in the dorms and living their lives as young people. Drinking, partying, and sex like all young people do when they get a taste of independence. But it wasn't that. It was because he had endured years of aggressive sexual abuse at the hands of his father. Usually, going to college is one of the most exciting and thrilling times of a young person's life. Not to Eric. This was his chance to escape Jose. He longed to escape the sexual abuse and nonstop trauma of his life.
Eric kept this secret from everyone, including his brother Lyle. But on Tuesday, August 15, 1989, Eric finally confessed to his brother that the abuse from Jose was still happening. Lyle had also been sexually abused by his father when he was 6 through age 8. Back then, though, Jose assured Lyle it wasn't happening to his little brother. So on Wednesday, August 16th, Lyle planned to bring his brother back to Princeton with him to save his little brother from his living nightmare. Later that night, Lyle decided to tell Kitty about their plan to leave. At one point, he also told Kitty that Jose had been molesting Eric and it needed to stop. Kitty insisted it was all lies and screamed for him to leave her room.
Back to the night of the murders. The couple had been killed by two 12-gauge shotguns, with Jose having been shot multiple times in the arms and once in the head, and Kitty being shot in the torso and face. The initial thought was that they had been the victims of a mob hit. The boys weren't even considered suspects at first. Their story of being out at the movies and coming home to find this exceptionally bloody scene checked out. It wasn't until 7 months later the investigation reached a turning point. While speaking to his therapist, Eric confessed to killing his parents along with his brother. The therapist's ex-partner found out and went to the police. On March 8, 1990, Lyle Menendez was arrested, and a few days later, on March 11th, Eric turned himself in. During their trial, the brothers pled guilty and claimed self-defense. Prosecutors, however, argued the Menendez brothers killed their parents to gain access to a $14 million inheritance. The defense built a tragic and detailed case that involved the testimony from not only an emotional Eric and Lyle, but more than 50 witnesses, and spanned 5 months. The defense's case also included evidence of extensive physical and psychological abuse. There were witness accounts from experts in the field of sexual abuse, as well as family members who received emotional confessions from the boys about their years of torture inside their silver spoon life. The defense argued the murders were self-defense after the brothers suffered years of sexual abuse from their parents, which led to them ultimately fearing for their lives. Each brother was initially tried separately, and in each trial, their juries could not reach a decision. And in the subsequent trial, Eric and Lyle were tried together. There were several differences in the second trial. Mainly, absolutely no witnesses or talk of sexual abuse was allowed. And so the two were convicted of first-degree murder and were sentenced to life in prison without parole.
The brothers' story was impossible to corroborate because the alleged villain was dead. By the time the brothers opened up about this abuse, the public had already started hating them and eating up the spoiled rich boy narrative for years. But maybe you've seen the brothers in the headlines lately. Why? A letter which was not offered as evidence at either trial was discovered in 2018 by Marta Cano, Jose Menendez's younger sister. It was a letter from a 13-year-old Eric telling his cousin Andy that Jose Menendez was, quote, massaging his genitals. He went on to write, "I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I'm afraid. You just don't know what Dad is like I do. He's crazy. He warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle." Not only that, recently ex-members from the band Menudo have come forward with detailed confessions of sexual abuse by Jose Menendez. This newly discovered evidence directly supports what the defense presented at trial. In a recent petition for a new trial, the attorneys argue that the new evidence could have led to a different outcome had it been presented in the brothers' defense.
Our 2023 minds can't wrap our heads around not taking into consideration the profound harm and utter horrors that sexual abuse does to victims. The very thought of dismissing such circumstances seems archaic, morally wrong, and just plain cruel. The deep impact of living a life with sexual abuse is a concept we now understand far better than we did 30 years ago. We also didn't have conversations around men being the victims of awful sexual atrocities. While neither brother denies committing the crime, the second trial was conducted without providing the jury with the full story. To an average person, that seems like a gross miscarriage of justice. Today, though, our justice system is flawed to say the least, and self-defense can be applied to a number of situations, including domestic and sexual violence. So, do these men deserve a new trial? Should they be let go with time served? And we can't help but wonder if the case were the Menendez sisters, would there have been a different outcome? Let's talk about it.
Rabia, what is your favorite Christmas carol? I got it. Rocking around the Christmas tree. The holidays are right around the corner.
Oh, my Lord.
Rabia Anwar Chaudry. So much stress, so much food, so many guests.
Yeah.
HelloFresh is here to take one little bit of stress off of your shoulders.
It's not even a little bit. It's a lot. I mean, because look, while you're planning those big old meals and having all those guests over to do, you still got to feed your family every single day. We all got to eat every single day, and HelloFresh is there to make sure you can do it easily, quickly, affordably.
Oh, absolutely affordably. Way cheaper than eating out, and actually even cheaper than going to the grocery store. You can choose from up to 45 recipes a week, over 100 curated picks from the HelloFresh market. And as always, all of the ingredients are farm to table, cook up quick. You can get meals cooked in 15 minutes. I mean, with all the octopusing that we have to do with the kids and the work and this, HelloFresh just makes my life so much easier.
You can actually hand it all over to those kids.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. That's what I love about HelloFresh. Here, daughter. Here, teenager. Here's step by step how to make these pre-portioned ingredients into a delicious meal for your mother. But the other thing is, this holiday season, HelloFresh is also going to help you reduce your stress because guess what? You can actually order amazing desserts from them for your guests. You can also get charcuterie boards from them. I mean, it's kind of amazing.
It is amazing. So go to HelloFresh.com/solvetheCaseFree and use code SolveTheCaseFree for free breakfast for life.
You get one breakfast item per box while the subscription is active.
That's free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/solvetheCaseFree with code SolveTheCaseFree. Listen, Rabia, we have so many friends and listeners who have small businesses, and there is so much that goes into growing a business. It's everything rests on your shoulders when you're a small business, from social media to getting your products to all kinds of customer service. But Shopify is here, and it is here to help.
Yep. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to, did we just hit 1 million order stage?
Hopefully, if you're listening to this, you have. Shopify helps you sell everywhere, from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to in-person point of sale. Wherever you are, whatever you're selling, Shopify is there and it has you covered.
Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. That's a lot. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries.
It does. It takes so much to make your small business grow, but Shopify is there to make it just a little bit easier. So sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/solve the case, and that's all in lowercase letters.
Go to shopify.com/solve the case, all in lowercase, now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in.
Shopify.com/solve the case.
Cha-ching.
Oh, yeah, they have that cute little sound, cha-ching, every time
Yep.
you make a sale. We hope you hear that and a lot with your Shopify.
Yeah.
So specifically, why are you drawn to this case? Is it because it's in the headlines right now, which we'll definitely get to, but why is this the case you wanted to talk about today?
So when the murder happened, I wasn't even born yet. I was still in my mom's belly. So I did grow up with this case in a sense. Like, I remember watching or seeing clips on court TV of just these boys. Like, they still looked like young kids to me. So I remember this. I remember growing up with OJ and John Bonet. Like, all of this stuff is so ingrained in me. Like, again, I am the demographic of true crime, court TV, all of that. So, it's always been just one of those cases that anything that comes up on it, I'm interested. I just always want to know what's going on with the Menendez boys. It became more interesting to me in the past couple of years when their names started coming up in the headlines again about, filing appeals because they never got a fair trial. And so recently they did file their habeas corpus, and then this documentary came out, and there had been rumblings for a while about, all of the abuse. And I just thought this was a really timely episode, especially because there's actionable things we can do. We can, let people know that they're trying to get a new trial.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about that, because there were 2 trials. The first trial, the boys were tried separately, and those ended up in hung juries, totally deadlocked, which one of my most interesting facts, I didn't actually put it in the research, was Lyle's jury was split down the middle. The 6 men voted for first-degree murder, and the 6 women voted for manslaughter. Totally separate conversation. So the main thing that I want to start with are the difference in the trials, because the first trial is that trial we all saw. It was televised all the time. It was the court TV. It was those heart-wrenching testimonies. The defense had 51 witnesses. The boys each took the stand for many, many days. They were able to call all kinds of expert witnesses that had histories with sexual abuse. And it was a very comprehensive trial, which was very different from the second trial, where the same judge presided, Judge Weisberg, and he ruled that basically none of the conversations around sexual abuse were to be talked about or permitted, and they limited the number of experts for between psychiatrists and anyone expert in the field of sexual assault to 1. And they were also not allowed to present the testimony of the psychiatrist who had been treating Eric since 1990. So I want to get your thoughts on the differences between the two trials, where the final trial, obviously, we know, ended with a first-degree murder conviction and life without the possibility of parole. And then we'll get into where it is now with the habeas corpus, and no, it's just habeas, and all of the bills passed in California since then.
Yeah. So basically you laid out the two trials, and really the fundamental and overarching difference was in the second trial, they were not allowed to bring up the abuse. So that meant that the defense had no defense, because that is what happened. The boys were traumatized. They were being abused by their parents. And they, psychologically traumatized. We understand what happened. They couldn't use that as a defense in the second trial. They had no defense in the second trial because the prosecution said they murdered their parents for money, spoiled kids. And sure, there's receipts. There's receipts of $90,000 credit card charges. So how do you defend against that? It really, they were set up to fail in that trial.
Right.
It's exactly what Maggie said. They basically were not allowed to present a defense at all. And there's also the fact that they are a lot older in the second trial too. This makes a difference. I mean, even between the time of the crime and the time of the first trial, right? Like, we are trying to think of them as children who are vulnerable and cannot defend themselves, but it's hard to when they look like grown men.
Yeah.
And every few years, as this, between the first and the second trial, they're going to look like even older grown men. And there's I think they're like nearly 30 by the time the second trial rolls around. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that also has an impact. But certainly, I mean, I'm trying to think of if at the second trial, they were presenting kind of the same testimony about, the sexual assault, about the abuse, I do think it would have been even harder for them to convince a jury of it because of just the fact that they look so much more mature. And then even, if you're somebody you can only repeat a story so many times, and it come out in a way that's feels almost convincing. After a while, you tell even the story of your own trauma enough times, you're not going to come across as traumatized as you're telling it. So even how they presented as witnesses would have been very different anyway. So they were, you're right. I mean, they were just set up to fail, Maggie, like the second trial. There's no way they could have won that.
I was going to say just about, they were older the second trial. Leslie Abramson was an amazing advocate for them. She truly believed, that what happened to them happens. And she really tried for them. And Rabia, I wonder, what you think about, she intentionally tried to dress them to look younger, to make them look like boys, to be more sympathetic. And I remember her getting a lot of shit about that. SNL did a bunch of horrible stuff, but it's exactly what you said, Rabia. She knew that, and she needed to let the jury somewhat know that these were boys when this happened. And that's why they kept calling them the boys. They were being infantilized, but for a very good reason.
Yeah. No, it's important to do that. And it's interesting because I was 14 or 15 when this trial took place. And the idea that kids would kill their parents, this is the first time I think I ever heard of that could even be a thing, that even could happen in this world. But it reminds me a lot of kind of I love bringing up Scott Peterson just to see Ellyn's face. But Scott Peterson and the response of pop culture, like you mentioned Saturday Night Live, the response of so many people was just complete, not just skepticism, but these guys think they're making fools out of us. You think we're idiots. I mean, I just remember thinking even then, and I knew very little about the details, but I do remember hearing that the boys said they were abused and it was self-defense. And I'm like, please.
Right.
I've got a tough mom. You know what I mean? I just thought it was bullshit. And so, but now the lens at which we see these situations, trauma, abuse, it's just vastly different 30 years later, And I just think about so many of these convictions that took place, not just this case, but so many cases that we don't even know about, right, under the radar. We'd have very different outcomes today.
Well, also, it just, for lack of better words, sort of like what we said in the crash course, it's just not fair because though the boys, ran from the law, right? At first, no one even suspected them. And then they went on this massive spending spree and they bought Porsches and they bought Rolexes and they lived at the Beverly Hills Hotel and they were acting out and they were acting in a way that the public immediately vilified them, right? And then the abuse came out. But how do you take these expert testimonies that were in the first trial? Like, for example, I'm going to list the ones that they didn't allow in the second trial. Dr. Ann Burgess, who was an internationally recognized pioneer in the assessment and treatment of victims of trauma and abuse, and she classified the scene as having lack of planning, high emotionality, and testified that she absolutely believed the brothers' abuse claims. Doctor after doctor, Dr. John Wilson testified that Eric Menendez displayed symptoms of chronic post-traumatic stress disorder and also testified that Eric Menendez suffered from subclass of the disorder known as battered person syndrome. Another one said that the sexual abuse may have gone on even longer than Lyle can even remember. That was Dr. John Conti. Dr. Stuart Hart, a psychology professor, said that he interviewed Lyle for 60 hours. Now, the prosecution had someone interview him for 16 hours, and they all absolutely said not only was the trauma very real, very evident in their actions and emotions, the way they told the story with the same amount of detail. And basically, that judge was like, yeah, none of that matters. We just want to know if they killed them. They said they killed them.
Yeah.
That is not what we're trying to figure out. They absolutely killed them. Murder is absolutely wrong. But the thing that has changed, which you brought up, Maggie, is that on September 30th, 2012, Governor Jerry Brown signed into law AB 593, which is known by the Sin of Silence Bill, which allows victims of domestic violence whose expert testimony was limited at their trial court proceedings to refile for habeas corpus, to allow the expert testimony to weigh in on their defense. So all of these things were passed after their trial. So why aren't they getting a new trial? But obviously the main thing to come out post trial was two things that happened fairly recently. And one of those things was a letter that was obtained written from Eric Menendez to his cousin Andy, who testified in the first trial. And in the letter, Eric wrote, quote, "I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in, and I need to put it out of my mind." Now, this letter wasn't discovered until 2018. And it's in his handwriting, and it's showing that he wasn't making this up on trial, no matter what the prosecution said. So, at what point do we say that 30 years out, we made a mistake? Obviously, we know murder is wrong. They should not have murdered their parents. But do they deserve a new trial? Should it have been manslaughter? We just know so much more now. And the conversation around sexual assault from male to male is something that we didn't really talk about 30 years ago.
Yeah, and the answer to both your questions is yes. It should have been manslaughter and they should get a new trial.
Yeah. And at the second trial, I believe that the judge wouldn't even allow the jury to consider even if they wanted to convict them of manslaughter instead of first-degree murder, they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
He removed that from the possibilities.
Yeah.
Also, just as early as 2023, a member of Menudo, now remember Jose Menendez, had music dealings with all these bands, Duran Duran, Menudo, like we said in the crash course. But a man by the name of Roy Rosello says that he was drugged and raped by Jose Menendez in their New Jersey home. And another member of the band, Angelo Garcia, also detailed physical, sexual, emotional abuse, talked about, being drugged. And so that's just, more evidence that Jose Menendez was an absolute monster.
Yeah, I think he, I think that's the way to describe him. He sounds like an absolute piece of shit. That, like, even at his first trial, no one said anything good about him. His sister had nothing nice to say about him. No one had anything nice to say about this man.
I know, Maggie, you wanted to talk about the habeas.
Mhm.
I mean, you've done a lot of post-conviction work, so you generally know how things go when you say, I've got some new evidence, like get me back in court, appellate court, give me a new trial or overturn my conviction, whatever. The reason I think it's going to be hard for them to like win on this issue is because they're arguing that we have new evidence related to an issue that the judge did not even allow at the trial
Mm.
during which they were convicted. Forget the first trial, right? Pretend like it didn't happen. They had a second trial. The second trial is how they were convicted. So he did not allow any of this, the sexual allegation stuff to come in. And so even if this evidence had been discovered then, if they had it, it would not have been allowed in. So would it have made a difference at trial? I mean, like, it's such a weird standard. Would it have made a difference at the trial, basically? And was it actually discoverable or not? If you're going to make the argument it was not at all discoverable, I can see court saying, well, even if it wasn't discoverable, let's say, well, it should have been discoverable because it was a letter. Somebody had it, right? And why didn't, was it a letter that Eric wrote or Lyle wrote?
Eric wrote it to his
Why
cousin
didn't Eric remember that he wrote this letter, right? Like if I am a prosecutor in this case, I'm going to make the argument that it was absolutely discoverable, but also it wouldn't have made a difference because if the judge had actually allowed, let's say the judge allowed all the sexual allegation evidence in, there was so much evidence, even without the letter, the jury might have believed that they were, I mean, I don't know how much that letter would have substantially bolstered that belief that either they were or were not being molested.
Well, the letter proved that they weren't just making it up in the moment. That's what the prosecution was alleging. That, all of a sudden you were raped by your dad. That's really sus. I mean, they denied all allegations of the abuse. They were making it up, but in the first trial. But the letter shows, he asks his cousin. He says, "My dad massages my genitals.
Yeah.
Does your dad do that?"
Yeah.
So that shows a little bit of concrete evidence because
that cousin testified at the first trial.
Yes,
and so the cousin has testified. The cousin testified of having personal knowledge of this stuff, right? Like contemporaneous knowledge that I was told at the time it was happening was happening. So what I'm saying is if again, the first trial we just kind of can't consider in terms of like for appellate reasons, the appeal is connected to what happened at the second trial. So if at the second trial, all the evidence about the sexual abuse was allowed in, like it was at the first trial, and that cousin once again testified, would this letter have made any kind of significant difference in addition to that testimony and all the other evidence that was presented? That's a question. But here, because none of it was allowed, I can actually see the appellate court saying,
"But how is that fair?"
Well, I was going to ask,
the system's not fair, girl.
No.
I know it's actually disgusting because nobody is saying that they didn't do it. Nobody is saying that they shouldn't have done it. They're saying they feared for their lives.
Right.
Because, they had finally said, if you don't stop this, we're going to expose the family. Because Eric was on his way to UCLA and Jose said, JK, you're staying home. You're not going to the dorm. So Eric, who had continued to be raped by his dad up until the age of 18, was like, Lyle, I have no way out. And he hadn't told his brother. He had kept this secret from his brother. And that's when Lyle finally was like, oh my God, he's still doing this. So he feared for his life.
Yeah. But here's the problem. Facts don't matter in these proceedings. What happens is if in the second trial, the judge is like, none of this stuff is allowed, you're not allowed a defense. What happened is then you're allowed to file a direct appeal, which appeals the judge's rulings. Like, so the direct appeals are like, the judge got all these things wrong. He ruled wrong on these motions, blah, blah, blah. They've done that. They've appealed these issues, the fact that the judge didn't allow this, and all the way up to the California Supreme Court. And the California Supreme Court said, nope, we're upholding conviction. That's not the kind of issue you can bring up at a habeas. Habeas is just about new evidence. And I mean, I just don't know. I'm saying that, the way courts work is if they want to do it, they'll find the law to make it happen. But I can just as easily see this being denied. I really
So
can.
you don't think that the allegations of the two members of Menudo having been sexually assaulted by the same man is enough evidence, or this letter saying that here is written documented evidence, because the prosecution was saying, oh, they got their cousins to say that. Multiple cousins, multiple family members
Yeah.
said that. But this piece of paper, don't you think that holds more weight in showing a history of abuse?
I guess what I'm trying to understand is if they weren't, Robbie, and I think you were trying to explain this, but I'm trying to connect the dots. So if the habeas is about new evidence pertaining to that trial, but the abuse wasn't in that trial, are you saying that
Yeah.
that means that this evidence is not even related?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's kind of a procedural
Yeah.
issue right here, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not even about the substance of those letters. But I could be wrong.
Right.
I mean, like, I could be wrong in terms of how, but I'm just, look, and the other thing is this, is like, when you talk about letters, I mean, you want to talk about letters? We got letters in this case. We have contemporaneous letters from a alibi witness who's like, I was with Adnan and I wrote letters. And you know what the prosecution said? They said, oh, he made her write those letters, or they're
Yep.
forged, or they're
Yep.
whatever. So there's a million ways that a prosecutor could refute that. I just don't know how the court's going to look at new evidence related, if the basis of that evidence was just like not even admissible at trial. Like, I'm just a little confused about that. And I'm sure there's other lawyers who know better than me, California attorneys certainly. But look, I hope it works. So a lot of times with these post conviction appeals, you just throw in stuff at the wall and hope something sticks.
Mhm.
Well, let me ask you this. So you're saying, so yes, because in their appeals, the appeals said that no errors were made, right? No errors in the trial were made.
Yeah.
But 30 years out, how do we not know now how do we not consider the psychological ramifications of abuse, the betrayal, the fear, especially when it comes at the hands of the people that are to protect you? Like, don't we know more about the human condition and how the mind works and how trauma affects us to say that his ruling of not letting any of that abuse in was actually wrong?
Rabia can answer the legal part because I don't know the details, but yes, in a sense, like that's what I see in all these post conviction reviews all the time is with junk science saying there's new science now. There's new science with
Mhm.
shaken baby syndrome and arson and all of that. So a lot of cases do get reviewed based on new science. Now, I don't know if this was a new science, Rabia.
Their conviction did not rest on any kind of scientific evidence
Right.
showing that
Right.
they were or were not abused. I mean, the whole issue of abuse didn't exist at the trial.
That's what, yeah,
And
that's the problem.
that's the real problem. And they've already appealed the fact that it wasn't, the judge didn't allow it, right? Like, they went through the direct appeals through the state courts and said they've kind of exhausted that issue, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know now if this is now in front of the Superior Court of California. I don't know now if this would fly procedurally. I'm just not sure. I could be wrong. But you know what? Look, if their lawyer believes they have, the legal grounds, then maybe
I
they
would
do.
argue that that is new scientific evidence. I would argue that we didn't know the mental, the physical implications of continual sexual assault.
He used a toothbrush. He'd have a tube of Vaseline, and he just played with me.
Did you do something to your brother?
Yes.
What did you do to your brother?
I took him out to the woods whenever I felt, I don't know. I took a toothbrush also, and I played with Eric in the same way. And I'm sorry.
Hearing these testimonies are gut wrenching, and hearing the parts of their testimonies Whereas people were just kind of rolling their eyes. Oh, boys don't do this to boys. And they really harped on Eric's sexuality because Eric was abused from age 6 to 18. Lyle was abused from age 6 to 8. And they kept harping on the fact that Eric was homosexual. I don't think those things would fly today. And I think we know so
Right, but
much
you
more.
once again you keep referring to the first trial. None of this happened at the second trial. That's why that's the problem, is that there's nothing to attack because it didn't even exist in the second trial. The second thing is the reason a court would not consider this new evidence is because this was not used to convict them. Like when you are filing a post-conviction appeal and you have new science that shows that what was used to convict these boys was bullshit, like bite mark evidence or blood splatter evidence or whatever, hair matching evidence, like, whatever, all this ballistic stuff that we know is bullshit now. If something was presented as scientific evidence and used in a conviction, you can then try to attack that conviction years later with new science. The issue doesn't exist. Like, pretend the first trial didn't happen, because that's what we have to actually do. And so you're dealing with a trial in which none of this existed.
Yeah. So can they say, like, it should have been let in, or can they still, like, I guess I'm just hung up on, can they even bring it up because it wasn't ruled on? It doesn't exist.
This is what I'm not sure about, because
Yeah.
they have already appealed the fact that it wasn't allowed in. They did that when they appealed the conviction. The direct appeal is what this is, a post-conviction appeal in which you bring new evidence. The direct appeal is like, the judge got this wrong, the judge got this wrong. They tried that and they lost all those appeals.
I'm going to, for you guys, I'm going to go to where it says evidence used in trial, because I want to explain to our listeners the evidence that was used in the first trial that was not included in the second, just to give you a picture, because it's not just stories of abuse. We're also talking about medical records. There was a record when Eric was 7 years old, an inexplicable injury to the back of his throat. And Dr. Carrie English testified that this type of injury is an indication of oral copulation in children. And now dentists are trained to look for this injury in children to be able to detect and report abuse. Not allowed. Confessions that the boys made to their family. Their cousin Diane was told by Lyle at 9 that he was, quote, afraid of his dad. Jeff, I have an audio clip here, but I'll say it right now. Afraid that his dad was going to come in his room and him and his dad had been touching each other down there.
When Lyle told me about the abuse, he was 8 years old at the time. One night, I was in my room changing the sheets on my bed, and Lyle came in saying that he was afraid to sleep in his own bed because his father and him had been touching each other down there. And I went upstairs and got Kitty. By her demeanor, I could tell that she was not believing any of this.
That was straight to his cousin. Again, the cousin Andy that testified about his dad massaging his genitals. Also, the testimony of their cousins, Ellyn and Kathleen, who spent the summers at the Menendez home and testified that he would take the boys into their room and forbid the cousins from going down the hall. And they would hear cries and groans coming from the bedroom, and that Kitty would turn the TV volume on high to stop them from hearing anything. They also testified, those same cousins, that Jose and the boys took showers together. Also not admitted. I'm just trying to get everyone's mind around it. That's cousin Diane testified that Kitty would go to the bathroom and help Lyle shower when he was 14 years old. And all of those expert testimonies I said at the beginning, I just can't wrap my head around it. I see what you're saying from a legal sense. I just don't understand how there's not a way to say, we have epically let these people down. They have served their time. Where is this judge? Can I talk to him?
I'll tell you what I think. I mean, and again, look, I mean, I'm sure they have a whole legal team, and you have to strategize sometimes. You have to say, we could file this. These are the things we could file, and decide which one you're going to try first, right? And you try the one. the habeas is what I would try first, because get them a new trial. That's your best bet, because at a new trial they could probably just be completely acquitted, right? If that didn't work, then what I would think is that this kind of evidence. Okay, I'm just let's say this new evidence was actually presented at the trial. Their best case scenario in that case would not be that they would not be convicted of anything. They might be convicted of manslaughter, right? That's the best case scenario. They killed them. They would not have been just walked out. They definitely killed them. So I think this could be the basis, for example, for a motion for a resentencing or a new sentence or a reduced sentence, something like that. I think might be more possible with this kind of new evidence. I don't think that this evidence is going to get them a new trial. I just don't think so.
Do you think they should?
That they should get a new trial?
Yeah.
1,000%. Of course they should. This was fundamentally, they did not, their due process. They were deprived of due process. They did not get to present a defense at all. It's shocking.
And what year was the direct appeal? Do we know?
Oh, we know, Maggie. Hold on. Let me go to the appeal section.
Because it's usually
What
the
color
first
is
one.
that?
Yeah.
What color is that?
The first appeal was filed June 1st, 1996. That was after the conviction, before the sentencing.
Yeah.
And then the California Court of Appeals held up that conviction again in February 27, 1998.
And so that particular
and then
ruling.
again in May.
Yeah. So that real ruling, I'm just going to read exactly what it says. The court's opinion established no new precedents and found that Judge Weisberg made no errors in a series of controversial rulings, right, that limited the defense testimony. So they have appealed the fact that the judge did not allow them to bring in the defense. They lost on both appellate levels. They lost in the California Court of Appeals and the California Supreme Court on this particular issue. They've exhausted that issue.
I object.
I wish it worked like that, Ellyn.
I object.
Judge Ellyn. Yeah.
It's true.
You're infuriating. It is. Yeah.
Ellyn, this is why I'm working out of a bar right now. This is what we do every day.
I know. And those fucking prosecutors that were denying appeals, this one really pissed me off. The prosecutors were absolutely disgusting, because the way I watched both boys' entire testimony from beginning to end, I could not turn it off while I was researching this. Yeah. And the detail, the emotion, number one, you can't fake that. The fact that they absolutely denied the abuse is not only a gross miscarriage of justice, it is just inhumane and cruel. Like, the prosecution went as far to challenge, because Eric had said something like that he kept a jar of Vaseline by the bed, right, as lubrication, because he did have penetration and it hurt him. And then the prosecutors were like, well, maybe you just had blisters on your hand from playing tennis.
Yeah.
How do you not just set fire to the courtroom when somebody says that? And I just don't think in 2023 that kind of behavior would fly. I just don't. I can't imagine it.
No, it wouldn't. And that's why I was asking. So the direct appeal is always the first appeal filed. So that's why I knew it was going to be older. And that just makes no sense to me, that we didn't even have 30 years ago this level of understanding. So how is that even fair that the appeal, it's just crazy. It just, I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out. I wrote them too and told them I support them both. And it's just.
Oh, that's great. I've thought about that.
Yeah.
Did they write back? They wrote back to Rosie O'Donnell.
They did not write back to me. So, I'm not Rosie O'Donnell.
Well, let me ask you this, Maggie. I mean, there's no real mystery in this case necessarily, right? There's not a lot to solve. I feel like everybody's kind of on the same page looking at this through a 2023 lens. And I don't know, Ellyn, how did you feel about this? Well, you were like 3 when this came out. I don't know how old you were. You were a tiny baby.
I was 2.
Yeah.
I was
yes.
not born.
So you didn't have any.
I was 3 years from being born.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, let's say before you started your research and watching the documentary and watching the testimony, did you have did you have a different idea about this case? Did you think of these killer boys?
I had an idea that they deserved a new trial, but researching and hearing the testimony, it's an injustice, actually. It is all an actual injustice. I think that judge was despicable. I think it was so unfair to not Lyle didn't even testify in the second one. Only Eric did, and they wouldn't even let his testimony from the first trial go to the second trial. What are we trying to do here? Are we trying to have justice be served, or it seems like, I think this is one of the most unfair things I have ever seen, because they were prevented from giving the jury the whole story. Right? I mean, if you were to get the whole story and you were to say, you know what, I still think they deserve life in prison. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't agree with you, but I have to accept that. But it's like if I ask you something, Maggie, and I'm like, just tell me what happened, but don't tell me any circumstances around it. There's always a circumstance. These kids feared for their lives. So a couple days before they proceeded to murder their family, their parents took them shark boat fishing. And they thought they were going to get killed that day.
Wow.
Even the captain said the boys didn't leave the bow of the boat. They clung onto each other. There was no interaction. The boys were convinced they were going to throw them out to sea and kill them, because Lyle said, I'm going to expose all of this because you're not letting Eric go to college. And Eric had never told Lyle, and Lyle was ready to blow it up. And so then Jose and Kitty lost their minds, and they were like, they're 100% going to kill us.
Yeah.
Because they were multi-millionaires. They had a place in Beverly Hills society. You think they want them uncovering the fact that they were raping their kids their entire year?
Well, I think
them.
they knew, obviously with the Menudo stuff too. I mean, many of those boys were sexually assaulted, not just Roy Rosello. They knew it was going to be a house of cards. That's what it was going to be. There was no hiding that.
Yeah. So why wouldn't those boys, knowing what their father is capable of, knowing what they've done to them, those boys, and also Jose was like a philanderer. He had women, he had men. Kitty turned a blind eye. Everyone was scared of Jose. People he worked with, people he worked for. He was a maniacal, scary man. Why would those boys, after being assaulted the way they were by the people that are supposed to protect them, think that they were not capable of killing them?
Yeah.
Ellyn, I'm sure you know of prosecutorial immunity.
Tell everyone about it, Maggie. I'm a lawyer, so I know that stuff.
That's why I said I'm sure you know. Yeah, basically, what is going to happen? Let's assume they get a new trial and they're, acquitted, whatever the decision is going to be, manslaughter, time served. What is going to happen to the original prosecutor and judge who, I think a lot of us can agree there was some really egregious things happening. What's going to happen? Nothing. Because we have this really exciting thing called prosecutorial immunity, where basically police, prosecutors, judges, most law enforcement gets a pass when they commit wrongdoings.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, the interesting thing about that is, even you can't even get to that issue unless and until you can make a claim of actual prosecutorial misconduct, they did something. And there actually isn't misconduct here. What they did was they used the law to keep out what they wanted to keep out. So they had a foot up in the trial, and the judge, it's not like misconduct would have been like they have some witnesses that they hid from the defense.
Totally.
Here,
but they didn't let the witnesses testify.
No,
they didn't let
but they did not.
Of the
No,
she means like a Brady violation or something like that.
A Brady, right. So if they went to the witnesses outside the courtroom and said, "Don't testify, I'll give you a whatever XYZ," that's an illegal way of preventing them from not testifying. If they just went to the judge and said, "I am moving to prevent this testimony," and the judge says, "Okay," that's a completely legal way of preventing it. So there, even in this case, I mean, immunity, all these prosecutors are probably judges at this point anyways. But I just realized that I never actually got to finish my question. I started off saying, Maggie, there's no mystery here, but so then what is it about this case that you're like, this is the one I have to do? I really want to talk about this case. Is it because of the incredible injustice in it?
I think because the incredible injustice. I think because this is still a topic that I think a lot of people many people. I mean, we live in New York City and we live in metro regions, but I'm sure there are people in this country who still don't believe that boys can be raped. I mean, we literally had politicians calling it legitimate rapes a few years ago about women. So I do think it's very important. This case is one that everyone knows. It's really one of those kind of household crime names. And now we're seeing a lot happen that people can learn from. People can learn about what a habeas is. People can learn that they're not getting the full story in trials. People, can learn about the psychological effects of abuse. I think that's why I really wanted to talk about it. I think it's fascinating, the psychology. I think hearing them talk now is also really interesting. I think sharing Roy Rossello's story is important. Telling people to watch the documentary so they can hear Roy's story. He deserves to be heard as well. I think there's a lot here that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Something that really stood out to me when I was rewatching the testimonies, and I don't know if this is intentional or I don't know if this is a sign of the times, but they kept saying, when your dad had sex with you. If I am a cold running person, I am always cold, and the way my body inflamed itself when they kept saying have sex with rather than assault or rape or they all the time. And that puts things in somebody's mind, and again pushing that narrative that Eric was gay, that he had homosexual urges. I just kept saying this would never happen now. It would never happen now. And you're right, like hearing them talk now, Maggie, they are pillars of the prisons, which by the way, also something very disgusting was intentionally separating them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They were
terrible.
for 20 years, they sent them to two opposite places. They could only write letters, and they finally reunited them after 20 years they hadn't seen each other. I got chills just even saying that. But it just seemed like that spoiled rich kid narrative that they got on. And listen, they were like, they were kind of like little shits, and they had done some robbery, and Lyle was kicked out of Princeton for plagiarism. They were troubled kids. They were kids acting out. You think people have everything when they have money, but they were not likable characters.
That's funny too, because I know, Rabia, Marty Tankleff. Marty Tankleff is an exoneree, and it was also a spoiled rich kid story, murdering his parents. And Marty wasn't particularly a likable character either back then. He was a spoiled rich kid. So it's really interesting how the narrative gets twisted.
And he was 16. I mean, what can you know about like the personality or character of somebody?
That's what I want to say. Like, I think it's really important for people to really watch out for these narratives, because that's two cases where that was not the case.
I mean, I have said for a long time that, the thing about court is, and the media in general, but certainly inside court, the best story wins. It's never about the actual truth, because you're not getting the full truth. Both sides are fighting to keep out certain things, and that's just how it is. And that's why, like, decades later, as we like discover all this new stuff, I mean, what I love seeing from Ellyn is like the outrage. And I'm watching the comments of our star witnesses, the outrage they feel that this new evidence wouldn't rise to the level. But in post-conviction work, you can have new DNA evidence that shows that a serial killer did it, and a court's going to say, nope, not good enough. Prosecutor's going to say, nope, not good enough. I mean, like, when you have actual forensic evidence linking a murder to somebody else, and that person can't get a new trial, the outrage is valid. And believe me, there's a lot of reasons to have it, because this is a deep problem in our system. We get stuck.
How do we fix it, Rabia?
I mean, the way to fix it, these are generally legislative fixes, right? Like, so like if we can, but it's like a state by state fight. Like, for example, in Maryland, we were lucky enough to pass the Juvenile Restoration Act a few years ago, right? That allowed juveniles who were convicted and sentenced to life without parole to apply for resentencing. It's a new law that just gives juveniles another shot in court, right?
You guys should listen to Suave, my podcast. That's what it's about.
It's an amazing podcast. So these are legislative fixes that you say, okay, if you have these kinds of issues, and then you have 30 years later, a whole new understanding of certain things like trauma. Like, can we legislate a basis for a new appeal, like in state courts? There's no reason you can't do that. Can we just come up
Yeah.
with a whole new reason that will allow people to get their foot back in the door in the appellate courts?
Yeah.
I mean, sadly, I know that sounds like a really long shot, but it's not. It can happen. You can make legislative changes to give people more chances.
Let me ask you a question that we posed in the crash course. What conversation would we be having now if it was the Menendez sisters?
Mm.
You know what? I actually don't think it would have made a difference. And I'll tell you why. Because we have seen how female victim survivors of rape have been treated in court as well. It becomes about how they dress and were they asking for it, and if you had two young girls who were also rich and spoiled and good looking, and I mean, I don't think female victims of sexual assault necessarily garner much more sympathy than male victims do. 30 years ago, they certainly didn't. Maybe now, I
Lorena
don't know.
Bobbitt, same time period.
Same thing. Yeah. So I don't know if it would have. I don't think it would have made a difference, actually.
See, I feel like the court of public opinion would have been different. Again, with the keeping all of the facts the same, the getting kicked out of Princeton, the burglary. I think there is some bit of, you can qualify that, right? A man shouldn't hurt a woman, but a man's not going to hurt another man. That's not it.
Here's
Boys
what
can't
I
be raped.
imagine.
Yeah.
Boys
Right,
can't
boys can
be
be raped.
raped. I just feel like I feel like you're absolutely right, Rabia. Of course, women don't get the respect, and they get slut shamed, and they get
and sexualized. I imagine if they were two beautiful young white girls, which, you know what I mean, they would have been sexualized in the media. If somebody's name was Hillary, it would have been like hot Hillary enters the courtroom. I mean, like that's
like
just
Amanda Knox.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's just how I think it would have gone. I mean, because at the end of the day, all the people are thinking is they killed their parents. I mean, like that's an established, like, you can't get around that fact. And if they kill their parents, like, that's like the kind of the worst thing a person could possibly do. So it just means everything else about the character is probably also deeply flawed. I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's, how hard it is to get a rape conviction. It's hard. I mean, and in this case, it wasn't even a rape. It's not like this was not a trial to prove that the father was raping anybody, right? Like, but if they had gone to the police, these boys had gone to the police, or if they were daughters and gone to the police to turn their father in instead of killing him, I don't even know if they could have gotten a conviction.
What do you think, Maggie?
If they went to the police, they wouldn't have been believed. I mean, if they went to the police prior to killing them, saying this is happening to us, they wouldn't have been believed, and they probably would have wound up. 2023 maybe.
And that is what they said. When they said, "Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you tell somebody?" Both Lyle and Eric said, "We did, but my dad is powerful." He got Eric off from those burglary charges by making a couple calls and writing some checks. He's like, they burgled homes. They stole like $100,000 worth of stuff in Calabasas, and he got him off. He's powerful. He's rich. And people are scared of him.
They were also told no one would believe them. They believed no one would believe, and then everyone that knew never helped. And they knew that the only way out was if they were going to help themselves, which wound up being what they did. But they were let down by everybody. Every single person let them down in their lives. No one came to save them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Let me ask you a question. If they hadn't done that spending spree, okay, just to give an idea. So the brothers' spending spree started 4 days after the murder, and they were tapping into Jose's life insurance. They spent about $1 million in a 6-month period of time. They charged the cards. They bought Rolexes, Porsches, clothing. Lyle bought a restaurant. He bought like a restaurant called
I never knew he bought a restaurant. That's crazy.
Yeah. It was called Chuck Spring Cafe, and it was like a really popular snack shop at like the Princeton area. And he paid, I think, $500,000 for it, somewhere around there. And then he changed the name, and they're like, "Why are you changing the name? This is a Princeton favorite, whatever." And they were just acting absolutely wild. Do you think if they hadn't have done that for the 6-month period of time, because they weren't being investigated at all. So it should be said, we'll go over a lot more of these facts on a couple more things on our Patreon. But for those of you who don't know, the way that the Menendez brothers were brought into custody and investigated in the first place was because Eric confessed to the murders to his psychiatrist, Dr. Jerome Ozell, and that was on October 31st, 1989. And the reason he went and talked to a psychiatrist was he was having suicidal ideation, keeping this secret, killing his parents. And then he told Lyle immediately that he confessed. Lyle threatened the doctor, basically said he would kill him if he told anyone. And Ozell didn't go straight to the police. He had them come in a couple more times. And then Ozell's ex-girlfriend found out about it. Her name was Judalon Smythe, I think her name was. And she's the one who went to the police. And then they were brought into custody and they were arrested separately. Lyle was arrested March 8th, 1990, and then Eric turned himself in 3 days later on March 11th. So that is how they came to be arrested. So without that confession, who knows how much longer it would have gone. But do you think if their actions weren't as sort of pompous and gregarious as they were, they wouldn't have such a bad outlook from the court and from the judge and use that kind of gross behavior to prosecute them?
I mean, they would have had to have a different motive. I don't know what that would have been.
I mean, the motive here. I mean, it was presented that they killed him for the money,
Right. That's what I mean. They would have had to have a different motive. Yeah.
And the jury bought it. The jury's like, yeah, like look at how extravagant they are. The first thing they're doing is like killing all this money, which I'm guessing a lot of teenagers would probably do, because they have no idea like how to deal with all this money. It's undisputed that they killed them. Like they found the weapons, right? They bought the guns themselves. This is how young people are not real smart when they're doing this stuff like this, right? And all the jury already knew. I mean, it was just about like, why did they do it? And if there's no self-defense argument made, like none of it matters unless like in the moment they could have been like, unless they could have argued that in that moment their lives were in danger. That's the only possible self-defense I think they could have raised without the sexual assault. So, because even when the sexual assault evidence was brought in, that's what people were. The response was, well, they could have left. It's not like he was in the middle. It was like right then and there. They had a threat to their lives, right? Like they had other options in terms of how to like escape this stuff. And people don't understand. Like, they didn't understand then how that trauma works and affects you. And they've both been sentenced to life sentences. Do you know, Ellyn, in your research, did you come across whether or not there was any attempt to get a death sentence? Because I believe,
yes,
right,
yes. In the second one, they deliberated whether or not it would be the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. What do you think about Lyle's jury being hung 6 men and 6 women? That is fascinating to me. Yeah. And they were deadlocked. Nobody was moving. I read some accounts by some of the jury members who they were female, and nobody was moving. What do you think about that?
Doesn't surprise me, actually. That doesn't surprise me. I think, Rabia, maybe you could speak to this, but when attorneys do jury selections, I think they often find that women are usually more sympathetic in these instances than men are. And that's not me saying that. I think that's usually what happens.
It is very interesting to me that it was so neatly split. I'm actually a little bit surprised at that, but I wonder when they did the voir dire, which is, that's when the attorneys on both sides get to eliminate potential jurors because, like, do one of the parties, do you have any other kind of compromises that, something that might compromise you? And I wonder if during voir dire, they asked whether anybody was a survivor or had experienced sexual assault. I mean, I wonder if they had not done that. I wonder if there were women in that jury who are like, they could see the truth of what happened because they had been on the receiving end of it themselves, like they had experienced it themselves. I mean, we know the statistics. 6 women, one of them probably is likely a survivor. But is that one woman able to convince all 6 women? I don't know. I also wonder how many of them were mothers. I feel like when a mother watches that, you can kind of see the little boys in them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm fascinated. But Ellyn, you said that there were interviews with some of those female jurors later.
Yeah.
And what were the kinds of things that they said? Why were they holding out?
Well, this is really interesting. A lot of them were saying, a lot of the men were saying, if it was just Jose, but why did they kill Kitty?
Oh, yeah. We haven't
So
talked
then,
about that yet. We haven't talked about
yeah.
that yet.
So the thing was, Jose was the aggressor,
Mm,
but the boys, number one, absolutely say that Kitty enabled the behavior,
Yep.
knew about the behavior, and Lyle also said that he was sexually assaulted by his mother.
Yeah.
That she would lay in bed and make him touch her,
mm,
and that Kitty could have protected them, and they didn't. So what they were saying was that they could, okay, so if your dad did all these horrible things, you killed your mom to get the money, though.
mm.
Because if you would have killed
Mm.
your dad, you were scared of your dad. Your dad was the powerful one. And he did. He ran the show. Like, but Kitty absolutely enabled it, but they couldn't wrap their head around that. So why didn't you just kill him and spare her? Because remember, when they committed the acts, when they came in and killed them, Jose was shot 6 times. Eric was the one who shot first, but Lyle is the one who actually shot the deadly bullets. Kitty was shot 10 times, but they ran out of ammunition, and Kitty was struggling for her life
Oh,
and was not dead. And Lyle went back to the car, got ammunition, and Lyle shot the final fatal shot to her face. That finally killed her. So that's what made them say, this was all about money.
yeah. What do you think about that, Maggie?
When you frame it like that, you can see how they,
Yeah.
the shot to the face, the going back to the car. How could you say, it wasn't a moment of what the defense was trying to say, none of this was planned, but that gives a different picture. But I do know, and you'll probably say this in your synopsis too, but they had just found out that Jose was not allowing Eric to go to college. That was a thing that had just happened that kind of was the catalyst. And then Kitty had said that allegedly said that she knew to them. And that's when they realized she knew this whole time. There was a direct catalyst to this moment of what happened. And it was, we are trapped in this forever. So
Yeah.
I don't know what was going through their heads when they shot them 10 times, went back, reloaded, shot him in the face. I was never been in that situation, but there were catalysts for this moment. It wasn't out of, it happens because.
I'm curious as to if the male jurors were like, well, that's where we draw the line, the Kitty part. How come the female jurors saw that different?
Because she enabled it and she denied it. Because the night that Eric finally told Lyle, this has still been going on, Lyle did not know, because Jose said, I will kill you. I will kill your brother if you tell anyone. And that's why Lyle really breaks down in his testimony, because he's like, I knew, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so
His
Lyle
testimony
said,
is gut-wrenching.
it is absolutely gut-wrenching. So he said, I'm going to go take care of it. So he talked to Kitty first. Lyle talked to Kitty. And Eric remembers hearing the fight, and they were throwing hands. So Lyle wore a hairpiece, like a toupee, because Jose made him, because he didn't want any son of his having a receding hairline.
Yep.
Kitty and him started fighting, and Kitty ripped off his toupee.
Yeah.
And Eric was like, you wear a toupee? Like, he remembers these counts. And Kitty was saying, Eric is a liar. He's always been a liar. So then in that moment, Lyle's like, and you're a monster too.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when Lyle went to Jose and said, we know everything. This stops or we tell everyone. And then a couple days later was that shark fishing
trip,
thing. So this just kept escalating. And what
Yeah.
escalated it was the fear of divulging these family secrets. And Kitty was in on it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was.
And she sexually assaulted Lyle.
Yeah. I mean, I think to the boys, it was like a team of predators. Like, you know,
Yeah.
they were in it together. Kitty knew, she allowed it. But you know, there's also, I think, you know, I don't even see this as like revenge because, you know, they've both been abusing Eric all these years. But I do think like there was this legitimate fear that our parents are going to kill us. They're going to. There's
I
no
think
way
so.
out. Yeah, because what way is out for
Yeah.
the parents? If the parents are
Yeah.
like they're going to tell people, like they're getting old enough now. We do not have the kind of control we had when they were little. I mean, they probably saw that we're going to end up dead. And you know what? They might have been right.
Yeah.
They might have been right. I mean, like, because really, a man like Jose, I mean, like, if he had to protect himself, I mean, like, considering what he was capable of doing, I don't know if he wouldn't have. I mean, he clearly thought of his children as disposable, anyways.
I was going to say someone else in this chat way earlier mentioned Laura Richards, and I really appreciate the work she does on coercive control.
Yeah.
And she did a 6-part series on this case and the boys,
Oh,
and very
okay.
specifically what happened that led up to this in terms of coercive control. And I would suggest people
Yeah.
listen to that. It's really thought-provoking, for sure, to say the least.
That's a fantastic recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's solve this. Let me ask a series of questions to solve this. Do we think that Lyle and Eric Menendez received a fair trial?
No.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Do we think that they should be let off with time served? Like,
Yeah.
in an ideal world, what would happen in this next appeal if you could write the history of the rest of
Well,
the story?
there's two things, right? Time served would mean they're still convicted felons. That
Yeah.
is still on their record. If they go to trial, sure, they have the chance of being convicted again. However, if they win, it's gone. They are not convicted felons anymore. So it's like, I mean, it would obviously be what they want. So I don't know. Or do they just want, a lot of people just want to get out. They just want to live their lives. I mean, these guys are
Yeah.
in their 50s now?
Yeah,
I mean,
They're
going
both
through another
married.
trial could take
Yeah.
years. And the other thing is, like, in a new trial, a prosecutor might be able to be like, okay, fine. Like, well, look, this is what, if they were awarded a new trial, a prosecutor would have to think, okay, I'm probably not going to get them on murder, right? Like, so they'll be acquitted of that. So then I'd have to present an alternate, an alternate, you know, possible charge like manslaughter. And if they're convicted of manslaughter, well, they've already done the time for that.
Yeah.
My guess is if they were actually granted a new trial, my guess is they'll be offered that shitty old Alfred plea, just so everybody can just be let off the hook, and it's the fastest way out of prison, basically. And that's my guess as to what would go down. I don't know. The habeas is looking thin to me, but I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I hope you're wrong, too.
I do hope you're wrong. I was feeling really good about it. And now I'm like, I don't feel good about it at all.
No, I could be really wrong. And you know what? I'm actually going to go and see if I can find some actual legal analysis, like from a California legal expert about the habeas, because I could be completely wrong. I don't know California law, certainly. I mean, but I'm just speaking in very general terms.
Do we know who their attorneys are?
Mark Garagos.
Yeah, Mark Garagos, Cliff Gardner.
And
Okay.
someone else.
Yeah, Garagos is a good attorney. I mean,
yeah.
Listen, you guys, I'm going to tell you something. And I want to trust you with this information.
Oh, God. Here we go. I'm leaning in.
I'm not actually a lawyer. But I want to scream from a non-lawyer person, this is not fair.
Yeah.
This is just not fair. That's all I was so invested in this research because I have never seen somebody say, it's like asking someone to, if something takes place over an hour and I give you 3 minutes worth of information, make a decision. No, I have 57 more minutes worth of shit to tell you.
Yeah.
It just does not seem fair. I know this is what you both do all the time. You both work in wrongful convictions. And it never ceases to amaze me how our judicial system is so back-asswards and
back-asswards. I love that.
cruel.
Wait till I tell you about how secret evidence has been used after the Patriot Act to convict hundreds of people.
Yeah.
That means evidence the state puts on that the defense is never allowed to see. That's a thing. It's insane.
It is wild. We're going to continue this conversation and we'll go a little bit more chronologically into some of the information of the trial and things of that nature on a couple more things on our Patreon. So hopefully Maggie can join us back for that as well.
Always.
And I could just talk about this forever, but yeah, Rabia, you did kind of take the wind out of my sails a little bit today, but that's what you're here for. You're here for a little bit of a dose of reality.
Yeah, the reality check from Rabia. And so what I want to
Sorry.
say actually that I always say is, Ellyn, you're talking about how the system is backwards. It is working exactly how it was intended to.
Yeah.
It was created by white men for white men. I want everyone should go and listen to Erased, the murder of Elma Sands. It's the first trial in the United States, first murder trial in United States history. It was Aaron Burr, Alexander Hamilton.
Oh yeah.
It's an incredible podcast, and it was about a woman who was murdered in New York. And our entire system is set up on sexism. It's a fun podcast to listen to. Everyone should listen to it.
Erased,
the murder of Elma Sands. It's actually Jason Flom's daughter, Allison. It's incredible. Allison Williams is in it. It's really good. But that said, if you want to know how our system was set up, it's working how it was intended to. So if you want to change it, everyone needs to vote judges, vote progressive prosecutors, like Rabia was talking about, vote for people who are going to enact legislation to make change. That is what you can do because it's not broken. It is actually working exactly how it's supposed to be.
And the law, I mean, like we literally learned this in law school. The law values finality.
Yeah.
Finality is like what courts want. They want to be like, done, close the book, put it away, never look at it again. We don't want to revisit stuff.
Yeah, something I learned I didn't even know was that prosecutors are pretty much like required to fight the appeals on to a certain extent. They have to for the integrity of the conviction, which obviously is bullshit. But
Finality.
Yeah, finality. They have to.
I am so glad you chose this case, Maggie, and we will definitely continue the conversation on our Patreon.
I just love that you guys were so passionate about it. Imagine I picked a case and you were like, we don't care.
It's really, it's a lot. There is a great documentary. We watched it the other night with our Patreon listeners. I think it's called Truth and Lies. There's that new show Monsters that's coming out on Netflix. This is a very important case.
Yeah.
I just think of the way how we've evolved as people and the things that we talk about and how we talk about it.
Yeah.
I
just feel like it would just be a totally different case in 2023. Yeah. So I can't wait to chat more about it.
I can guarantee that there are thousands and thousands more like it. Thousands more cases in which people who finally fought back against like their attackers and against their assaulters, like are rotting in prison and like we just don't know about them. But if there's some precedent, we set some precedent, maybe they'll get another chance too. But new legislation can give people new chances.
Maggie, will you tell our Rabia and Ellyn Solve the Case listeners where they can find you, where they can connect, and how they can support you in all of your upcoming projects?
Yep. So I'm generally mostly on Instagram, Maggie Freleng, Twitter, Maggie Freleng. Basically, if you just search Maggie Freleng, there's only one of me. There's no others. So that's how you find me.
You are definitely singular, Maggie.
Yes,
you are one of a kind.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Actually, Ellyn, something really funny. I don't know if you watch Key and Peele, but there's this there's the whole skit with like President Obama's like anger management guy. I'm going to send this to you because before when you were like, I just want to scream, I was thinking of just having you next to me for moments where like, I want to scream and you just do the screaming for me. I'm going to send,
I'll do it.
I'm going to send you this.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it. And tell everyone about all of your upcoming projects and podcasts because there are just so many.
Yes. So season 3 of Wrongful Conviction with me is coming out January. Been busting my ass getting that done. There's some crazy cases. I'm working on a spin-off long form on one of those, Quincy Cross out of Kentucky. Nice. We're working with the Kentucky Innocence Project on that. That's a crazy case. The man will probably get out based on a purple dildo receipt. So look forward to that one in the new year.
Ellyn's face. She loves a dildo story. Yeah, good dildo story.
Yeah. Love a dildo story.
Any chance you get Rabia to say dildo,
Yes.
you won the day. You won the podcast.
When this habeas, like when they start ruling on it, they're gonna have to talk about dildos in court. Like this is gonna have to happen. Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm sorry. I want to be like the transponster and be like, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Could you repeat
One more
that?
time. Dildo? Okay.
Say in the back.
Dildo?
What size? What color?
Well, Maggie Freleng, you are a gem. We absolutely adore having you.
You're amazing, Maggie.
And we will continue our conversation on the Patreon. If you would like to join our Patreon, please find us at www.patreon.com/Rabia and Ellyn. That is where we do a couple more things. We also do our watch parties. We do them all the time lately. And we have a little bit more fun with you. You also get About Damn Crime every other week. There is ad-free options there for you as well. And of course, you can be one of our star witnesses and you can sit in the jury box and watch our live recordings, which we absolutely do love. And you can find us on socials at Rabia and Ellyn, everywhere you want to connect with us on socials. We really do appreciate hearing from you. And Rabia, tell them where they can find you on social media.
I am on Instagram at Rabia squared 2. I am just my name on Facebook and the site that used to be Twitter. I'm not there a whole lot, so don't even worry about that. But I do want to say, don't forget, we're on YouTube now. So if you're listening to this, you can actually watch us do all this. You can look at beautiful Maggie and her amazing tattoos, and you can see Ellyn rolling her eyes at me. And so go to YouTube, subscribe to us, please. Subscribe to our YouTube and also to the podcast. Give us some ratings. All 5 stars.
And join our Facebook group. We have tons of things going on there. We talk about damn crime. You guys bring us stories all the time. We love talking about these cases in a more broad way. We have great, excellent, productive, supportive conversations there. So find us in our discussion group on Facebook, Rabia and Ellyn. And there's a picture of us. Don't be fooled by any other Facebook pages because they're fan accounts there to make fun of us. Until next time, thank you, Maggie Freleng. We adore you.
Adore you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you so much to our jury box and our star witnesses for joining us live here in the studio. And I love you to bits, Rabia Chaudry.
Love you too, Ellyn. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.